Welcome back to another episode of the Startup Junkies podcast. My name is Matthew Ward, and I am the MBA intern on the team. Today, I have with me the usual crew, Jeff Amerine and Caleb Talley. How are y'all doing, guys?
Doing super usual.
Good,
Fantastic.
good. And today we have with us our guest, Dustin Finkel. Dustin is the CEO and founder of Kapop, which was on Shark Tank and QVC. Kapop is a company that takes the hottest snacking trends and upgrades the category with the delicious and nutritious power of ancient grains. I have actually tried the chips, and they are definitely a 10 out of 10. And on March 8th, 2021, I actually saw a YouTube video from Kapop's channel stating that they are merging with Bubba's Fine Foods to form Awaken Food, where Dustin is currently the CEO. So Dustin, congratulations on all the success, and we are happy to have you on, man.
Well, thank you. That's a great intro. I need to steal you for every time I start like an investor call. I'm going to have you lead me into the call. But yeah, that was fantastic. And it's been quite a journey, but thank you.
Well, give us the origin story. Kind of reel it back a few years and tell us how. I know you've had a really interesting kind of not the usual journey for a food entrepreneur. So give us the origin story.
Yeah, I'm a bit unique on paper, I guess. The story actually started the same, but I'll give a little bit of background. So I have actually started my career in investment banking. So I was in finance, Wall Street, very different than the world that we're leading now. And it's funny because back then I always wanted to be a CEO. My vision, though, is like Fortune 100 CEO, clearly very different because I'm now Fortune like 85,000th CEO maybe for my company. But you know, the journey has been very different. I went to get my MBA at Kellogg, switched into CPG where I ran brands like Chex, and I actually had the opportunity of launching the first nationwide gluten-free product ever with gluten-free Chex, which was amazing. I'm a health and wellness junkie, very passionate about eating right and living a great value, but I love eating. And when we launched gluten-free Chex, what I found and learned about in the consumer packaged goods space was how impactful our decisions in food can be for consumers. And the story I love to tell is we launched rice Chex initially as gluten-free, which is the most, boring cereal there is, right? It's pretty plain. And yet these parents wrote in and said, we bought this rice Chex, our daughter's celiacs. And that night we found her crying in her bed because we found her and she was so excited to be eating real people food versus the gluten-free nonsense that was, there back in the early 2000s and before. And now you look at where we are and eating gluten-free is not that big a deal, but back then it was. And I really saw the impact of the decisions we make in our food ecosystem. From there, I had the opportunity to work at a lot of different food companies. And then I had this wacky idea of starting my own food company. And to be honest, I actually didn't have an idea of starting my food company. I was eating a lot of popcorn and things that, we all love to eat. But the reality is a lot of our mass-produced grains these days are not healthy. They've been genetically modified or hybridized or grown. Corn today is so much bigger and sweeter and harder to digest than corn that our ancestors ate. So I went into my pantry and I had this light bulb moment of, I wonder if we can pop these ancient grains that I have. And I'll come back to ancient grains, but they are phenomenal. I was like, I wonder if they'll pop. Threw them on the stove. They kind of pop. They make little tiny kernels. I was like, and my son loved it. My other son loved it. Our neighbors loved it. So despite my food background, it started just like everyone else. I thought there was a better way. My neighbors liked it. The difference is I had a network that allowed me to really kind of partake and grow this business fairly quickly. Ancient grains, just to jump back to that, are grains that haven't been modified for thousands of years. They're super nutritious. They remain in that inherent original genetic form, so they're densely nutritious with fiber and protein and antioxidants. And sorghum, which is our primary grain, is grown in Colorado and Kansas. It's regenerative. 91% of the land it's grown on uses zero irrigation. It's a phenomenal product. So long-winded origin story, but like you saw on Shark Tank, I ripped off the suit. So I do need an origin story since I wore a superhero outfit on Shark Tank.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. You're one of a handful of people we know that have been on the show, and we had a casting call here, and it's, did you find after appearing on Shark Tank that elevated the brand awareness? Was that kind of an inflection moment for the business?
I went to a NOSH event, and the brand that was talking about their Shark Tank experience, and they said, everyone needs their Shark Tank moment. And I'm very fortunate to actually have my Shark Tank moment be on Shark Tank. I'll come back to what that means, but yes, the 9 days after we aired, we sold more on Amazon than all of the previous year combined in 9 days.
Wow.
And it reset the baseline. And we've re-aired 3 or 4 times. And it's funny, we will re-air and not even realize until we see this jump in our e-commerce sales. Like, oh, we must have re-aired. And so there's this incredible awareness. And what's interesting to me is we're in season 11. We aired in season 11, and there's still so much passion behind it. I'll take 2 big learnings I came from it. One is that the Shark Tank effect is huge. People still really resonate to it. Buyers, it's literally one of the first things I talk about because A, I'm super proud of it, but B, it really does resonate. But number 2 is that consumers have a very flawed idea of how business works. And I'll give you 2 examples that I find kind of funny. So the week before we aired, I actually was in Salt Lake City doing demos at Whole Foods. And we had this thing, hey, we're going to be on Shark Tank next week, watch us. And we were starting to promote this. And people would come up and say, you must have gotten a deal. Otherwise, you wouldn't still be in business. And I found it fascinating that that's the consumer perception. These were intelligent consumers. And I must have heard that a dozen times. Then after we aired, the shock that we were still there from people who watched and saw that we ended up turning down our deal, that we were still in business. And so I found that very fascinating, this perception of, I think, how entrepreneurship works within consumers' minds.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm going to ask you a little bit about the supply chain question because you are choosing better ingredients. You mentioned where the sorghum is grown. How do you manage when you're using the ancient grains, more exotic stuff, not commoditized stuff? How do you manage the sourcing side of it to make sure that you can maintain the quality that you want to deliver?
Regardless of whether you're using unique ingredients like we are, I think this is a fundamental challenge for all entrepreneurs, is making sure that they can manage quality and consistency. Whether it's corn, or rice, or sorghum. To answer your question, I believe everything we do is about relationships. So we are so fundamentally focused on building strong relationships and punching above our weight. And since the day we launched, I've been able to establish incredible partnerships with our supply chain network because we give as much as we take, and we try and give even more. And so I'm always trying to give back to our family farmer partners that we use, to our processors, to our ingredient suppliers, spice suppliers, etc. So that's number 1. It's simple, but so few people do it well. It's like customer service. It's a lost art to a certain degree. Now, to answer your question, though, more specifically, is we went out and we found all the suppliers that really do sorghum well. We started having relationships and building relationships with them. And ultimately, we made sure that we had our primary and we had contingency plans. I'm very, very big on contingency plans. You never know when something's going to go wrong. A harvest goes bad, a crop goes down, farmers are really struggling. And so, we identified our options. And the second part is we pre-buy. So we establish year-long relationships with that. Interestingly enough, I had no idea, but sorghum is one of the largest exported items to China. So when our trade wars started during the last couple of years, and then COVID, sorghum really was impacted, which impacts corn pricing and everything else in the marketplace. And so having that relationship, making sure that we pre-buy, making sure that we establish that continuation plan and contingency plan is really, really critical.
Hopefully you don't have anything coming along a canal anywhere.
Nothing that needs to go through the Suez Canal, right?
We literally, no joke. So we have some equipment we bought that was coming through that, and I think we beat it by a handful of days. Wow. And so we are just thanking our lucky stars that we weren't stuck behind that. Apparently, it's something like $9 billion worth of trade goes through there every day. So it's crazy.
It's currently idling.
Not the place where you want to accidentally hit a sandbar or be asleep at the wheel, right?
Exactly.
I've visited the website, and we've tried the products, but if you visit the website, you kind of get the feel associated with the brand of being family oriented, fun. Tell me a little bit about how you built that brand.
As a health and wellness junkie, and I work out, 6, 7 days a week, and I try and eat really, really clean. And I'm so frustrated by the lack of authenticity in our food chain supply. I talk about, if you ever hear me pitch our brand, I say we're about authenticity, simplicity, and joy. And there's so few brands that do that. And the example I'll give is like a paleo. I love the paleo diet, and you'll see something that's called paleo. And technically it checks the box on being paleo, but if you look at the first 3 ingredients, it's like date, syrup, agave, or whatever else, and it's really sugar, sugar, sugar. Now, technically those are all paleo ingredients, but it's not living up to the authentic drive of what paleo stands for. And that drives me crazy. And so I wanted to make sure that we were authentic, number one. The second is, simple foods taste really, really good. You don't have to overcomplicate things. How many times have you bought something and they add sugar or they add something else in the ingredient? You're like, why? Why do you do that? This tastes good by itself. And so I really wanted to find those clean ingredients. And then the joy part, the fun part, is where I really wanted to differentiate our brand, because especially when we launched, and I've seen this starting to change, it was no, no, no. We're not this, we're not that, we're anti this, we're anti that. And yes, Kapop and Bubba's checks all those boxes. We're non-GMO, gluten-free, allergen-free, but we're not taste-free. And that's really the differentiator that I try and find, is that our branding is about fun. It's about enjoyment. Snacking is fun. It should not be a trade-off. It shouldn't be about this serious engagement. When you snacked as a kid, you were on the playground, eating, enjoying. That's what I want to bring back, but I want to do it in this authentic and simplistic way. And then the final thing, like I said, is taste. The thing that differentiates Kapop, that really shouldn't, but does, is the incredible 5-star taste. And you guys have tried it, and I think you validate that, but we're only 3 ingredients. We're sorghum. We have no fillers, no rice, no corn, no wheat. We don't cheapen the product. 100% sorghum, cold pressed oil, and 100% seasonings that you would find in your pantry, and they taste delicious. And our vegan cheddar product is probably my favorite from that execution, because literally, it's a vegan cheddar puff or chip. We've gone to dairy managers and people who sell cheese for a living, and they have no idea that's vegan. The amount of times I eat it, I'm like, do you know that's vegan? They're like, what? That's like a Cheeto. And I find so much joy in that. And then the final thing is, we did a word cloud on all the reviews we've ever gotten. We have hundreds and hundreds of reviews, and the number 1 word by far is love. And I take great passion in that. And some of it goes back to the customer service mantra, which I'm super passionate about. But I want consumers to love my product, to just gravitate toward it, enjoy the eating experience, enjoy the branding, have fun. If you watch our videos, I'm always goofing off. I didn't know in the Bubba's video you mentioned at the beginning, they were going to show some outtakes where I was making a complete, what of myself, but we like to have fun.
Yeah, I think you said something on some of your branding about being a master of dad jokes. And,
Yep.
and then I was looking through some of it, and it was like one after another. And it's funny, on Slack, we've got a channel we call Dad Jokes, and it's probably gets posted to more than any other communication we have internally. So your culture and branding really resonated with all of us, that's for sure.
And
I
so,
can tell you, one thing I'll say is every meeting I start with, and it could be a very serious meeting. And this is probably a flaw as a leader to probably a certain extent, but I start with like 5-6 minutes of dad jokes until somebody's like, stop, enough. Okay, let's move on. So I'm constantly finding, so if you guys have good ones, send them my way, because I'm running out of material.
I was going to say, I have in my notes here to ask you, hit us with your best dad joke.
Oh man, I knew I was leading to that without the pressure. All right, here's one for you. How do Eskimos build their homes? It glues them together. Glues them together. I actually, there's a very witty one. This one will really stretch your audience's thinking, and I'm going off of heart. This one is one I should read, but I'm going to go off memory. So a horse is in a bar, and goes in the bar quite a bit, is drinking a lot of alcohol. And so the bartender one day says, listen, I'm concerned about you. Do you think you might be an alcoholic? And the horse says, I don't think so. What this joke really is about Descartes, who wrote the infamous phrase, I think, therefore I am. But to really get into Descartes is to put Descartes before the horse. Thank you.
I was worried. It was a long windup, but that finished extremely well. That was really good.
Thank you.
Really
I was getting worried. I was like, I hope I remember the punchline.
Fantastic.
Dustin,
Well,
on that aspect of fun, it seems like you and your family are very involved with the company. How do you make sure to find that time between family and running a corporation?
It's funny you say that because Jeff, the founder of Bubba's, who's now the COO of Awakened, and I were just having this conversation. And, the honest answer is it's really, really hard. Being an entrepreneur is the hardest thing I've ever done. I used to be an investment banker with Goldman Sachs, and you think of those hours that you work, and it's like 180 hours a day. I don't remember what it was. This is unlike anything. I haven't taken a day off, literally, in probably 3 years since I've started this, not a single day off. And it's challenging, but what I try and do is incorporate my family as much as possible. One way is Christina, my wife, is actually the CMO of the company. Now, I would argue that might not be as good a way as maybe you think it would be, but she's an incredibly brilliant marketer. My kids, I take great pride that my oldest son, Merrick, when you ask him what he wants to be when he grows up, he says CEO of Kapop. Now, I love that in my heart, but then I say to him, if I'm still CEO of Kapop when you're old enough, I'm going to really be upset with everything. So there's that tangibility. But, the one thing that we try and do, and Jeff and I both do this really well, is we try and dedicate time to our families, dedicate time to our kids. As an example, I was just on spring break for a few days, and I would wake up at 5 a.m. on the Pacific Coast, work till 11:30, just solid, guns out. And then I just was focused on them from 11:30 till about 5, do a couple more hours of work, and then refocus on the family. And so it's hard. I'll tell you, anyone who thinks entrepreneur is, you make your own schedule, you have your own time, you make your own schedule to work more is what you do.
That's right.
But it's incredibly rewarding. And, that to know that my kids love the brand, to be proud of their father. I have that dream that one day when they're older, they're only 9 and 7 years old, they're younger, but that when they get older, they can look and say, my dad created this business. He built this from the ground up. That's very rewarding in my mind.
With that in mind, what's the 5-year, 10-year plan?
I'll talk about the merger a little bit because I think that really sets the foundation for this. So when I walked into 2020, we had just aired on Shark Tank. 2020 was going to be a great year. And then, I'm not sure if you guys heard about this pandemic. Yeah, I'm not sure if you heard about this worldwide pandemic that happened in March. But, and honestly, I wrote 5 things on my board. The 5 things and the strategies that I wanted to accomplish was, number 1, operational flexibility, operational quality. We talked about quality before. Innovation. Profitability, which is a crazy terminology in startup food world, which I'm sure you guys know. Mm-hmm. And then 5 was keto and grain free, something I'm passionate about, but running a grain-based brand is very hard to do. And those are the 2 fastest growing areas in the history of food, actually. And so let's go through each one really quickly. Operational quality and consistency, as a small brand, but growing, it's really difficult to manage when you're working through co-manufacturing. You're trying to find line time, you're trying to manage quality when this place is really just cranking out products. That's their goal. And to have that flexibility, which leads into innovation. Innovation in today's world is not the same as when I started with General Mills. Back then it was produce a big product, invest a lot, launch it into 40% distribution ACV, and go from there. Now you need to launch online, you need to be nimble, you need to address trends, flavors, etc., and go quickly. And it's evidence every innovation we've had as a brand has been our biggest launch yet. Our sriracha flavor, which you mentioned was your favorite, was our best launch. Then we launched churro, which is now our number 1 flavor. Then we did our birthday cake, which was then our number 1 seller. We've been very fortunate, but in a world where you can't be flexible, it's very hard to do that well. I'll come back to profitability in a second. The final was keto and grain free, which I kind of thought was a pipe dream. Well, having the experience I have, I'm very fortunate to be mentor, advisor to a lot of different brands. And I was very fortunate and lucky to join the CEO group coming out of COVID, where 5 of us meet every week to talk about our challenges, our concerns, commiserate, lean on each other's shoulders and cry, and grow as founders and CEOs. And Jeff Schmidgold, the founder of Bubba's, was part of that group. And we started advising each other and helping each other out. And I ultimately identified, here's a brand that's growing really fast. It has keto and grain-free and paleo as its background. It has its own manufacturing assets. Jeff is an engineer by trade. I'm a brand and business builder by trade. Man, there's some incredible synergies here. How do we come together? And we ultimately merged together. We've invested about $1 million in assets. We created Awakened Foods, which has Kapop, Bubba's, and now Awakened Food Crafters as our manufacturing arm, where we do private label and co-manufacturing for retailers and other brands. And I'll tell you, it's funny because I talked about the differentiation with Kapop that shouldn't be, i.e. great taste, simple ingredients. Well, now the differentiator on the co-man side is fascinating to me because I basically sell this idea. I'm a brand. I know all the struggles you've been through with co-manufacturing. I can help you with those problems. I'm here to be a partner for you. And I'm not kidding. When you see the people on the other side of Zoom nowadays, their eyes just light up and the smile that crosses their face, whether they're a new entrepreneur or been in this space for 15 years, and just to hear someone understand the pain points of manufacturing and be willing to invest the effort to solve that, it's a game changer. And it's something I can authentically talk about. And so we're really excited by that. And we're excited by the future. So to answer your question, I mean, the growth is incredible with this new enterprise. So we can grow Kapop and Bubba's, which are continuing to see great growth. Also the co-man side. But think about this, we can be an incubator for investors who invest in other brands. We can bring those brands in and help grow those. We can build our own brands. We can test things quickly. There are so many avenues for us to grow that that was the whole point, build as much flexibility to growth, because who knows what the next COVID is, or who knows what the next growth trend is, or what that might be, and we're set up for success.
That's a really, really smart strategy from the standpoint of that, as you know, the co-packing, the co-manufacturing piece for a new brand is the greatest point of risk, just because it's out of your control. And if you can establish that as your trusted partner, because you operate your own brands and kind of a fair broker looking out for their best interest, it'll make all the difference. A lot of times when we've looked at food and beverage deals to invest in, we wouldn't do it if they had a co-manufacturer or a co-packer, unless they were extremely savvy operators, because we've seen any number of instances where a bad selection there will run a good brand, a potentially good brand, out of business. So that's a really smart play. I mean, you already knew that, but I can tell you from an investor standpoint, that really makes a ton of sense to me.
You know, it's funny, Jeff, when I started pitching this, because we're in the fundraising process, you know, I was unsure of what the reaction was going to be to the strategy I created. We're fairly small to create this holding company concept and to build our own manufacturing entity. And the response 99 out of 100 times has been what you're saying. And so, you know, I love to hear it and I appreciate you saying that, but, you know, I am convicted that we are doing this the right way. And I really keep circling back to this idea of customer service, because that's what we're selling. On the brand side, we're selling a great food experience. And oh, by the way, quite literally, if you don't have a good experience, we're going to do literally whatever it takes to make you feel great about it. In fact, we have this wall called #formerlyangries. And so X person writes in is like, you're the worst, you did this. And my team's so great that we turn them around and they write these like super nice emails back to us. I mean, formerly angry Trevor, formerly angry Suzanne, or whatever it is. It's fantastic. But on the manufacturing side, it's the same thing. It's conversations, it's partnership. It's not how many pounds of volume do you do, what's the cost, and what are the ingredients. It's like, all right, what are you trying to accomplish? How can we assist you getting there? Because while this should be obvious, apparently it's not. If you grow, I grow. How do we make that happen? And like I said, it's been a really resounding success so far.
Dustin, with all your knowledge and experience, what was the catalyst behind you becoming an adjunct professor?
You know, there wasn't really one, but I love doing it. So I got called. Someone recommended me for the position, and I got called by the chair of the CMCI group at University of Colorado. And I went in to talk to him, and you know, it's actually always been on my docket. You know, one day when I'm done with this, it'd be really cool to be a professor. And I just had the opportunity to do it early. And I'll tell you what, I love it. I don't love it in the Zoom world. I will tell you that, because I am, as you guys can probably tell from my energy, like I like to be in front of people and doing all my dad jokes. And man, if I could just get one laugh out of a college kid with a dad joke, it's a home run for me. But it's usually the ones who want the A's that know smart enough to laugh at my jokes. But No, I love doing it, and it's fascinating because I've built really close relationships with some of those students over time. I've become a mentor, a guide, help them along their journeys. I typically teach a class that has anywhere from 100 to 150 students in it, so it's a large type of class. On the selfish side, it has made me so much more effective at public speaking, at being comfortable in front of crowds. And my class, because I only have time to do one night a week, I'm with college students from 6 to 8:30 on a given night. I'm the last place they want to be. So I put as much energy and effort as I can to I know you don't want to be here. How do I make it as enjoyable as humanly possible for you to be here? And we try and do that. And, I bring Kapop into every class. And so good questions, good answers, get Kapop thrown at them. And that seems to work wonders. But I really do enjoy that. And it's my way of giving back in a world where I don't have a lot of time to give back in other ways besides all the great stuff we do as a brand, giving back to schools and the military and stuff like that. On a personal level, it's my way of giving back, and I absolutely enjoy it, and hope I get to do it for years to come.
Yeah, being an adjunct is a lot of fun, and you got to realize the one night of the week that you for sure don't want to teach is Thursday night, because guaranteed you're cutting into their drinking time.
Absolutely.
On Thursday night. And I have for about the past 13 years. I've been an adjunct as well. And I love it the same way. But you got to be entertaining on Thursday night or they won't show.
Yeah, I honestly just bailed in on Thursday night. Yeah, that's a tough night. I've done a lot of Monday nights, and Monday nights have their, after the weekend, kind of coma hangover, quite literally.
Right.
So I'm not sure there's a good night for it. And it's funny with Monday nights, I'm missing Monday Night Football or whatever it was.
Sure.
And then The Bachelor had its final on one of the shows, and half the students were out. But yeah, it's really fascinating, and it's interesting having a class that big. And I put a lot of energy and effort into teaching. And I'll tell anyone who wants to go into it, it's not easy. I mean, Jeff, I'm sure it's not easy. It's a lot more work than I expected. But I absolutely enjoy it.
Yeah, me too. I agree.
So Dustin, when will I be able to go across town in Northwest Arkansas and buy a bag of the red and green sriracha puffs?
Which one of you have the great relationships with Walmart? I mean, clearly. We were a part of Walmart's doing great things with trying to innovate in the space and move into the natural sector. And it's funny, when I used to run and work on Horizon Organic, we did a lot of work with Walmart. And I think they're kind of tracking the journey for general population. As general population starts moving into these organic and natural channels, I think they're doing a nice job of following that journey. The hard part for a lot of our brands is the price point is difficult. Walmart's amazing with their margin structures, but it's a price point game. And so Walmart's starting to do these innovation corners and innovation executions. We were actually going to be part of one in the salty snack space. And then again, COVID came and kind of disrupted some of our activities there. But we are actively interested. If anyone's listening from Walmart senior leadership, I would love to be a part of that. I've worked with Walmart. It's been a long time since I've been to Bentonville. But I used to love going because, believe it or not, Bentonville has some good sushi restaurants and some other restaurants, and I really enjoy going. So I will say this though: you can always get us at your doorstep, and on Amazon or bubbasfoods.com, kapopsnacks.com. There's my shameless plug. And leave us 5-star reviews, because that's the other one. And actually, in all seriousness, I don't think people realize how impactful reviews are to small brands. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize that either until I got into this. But if you love a brand, review them. It makes a big difference. And if you don't love a brand, before you leave that 1-star review, email us and give us a chance to fix it, because I know most of us will try and do what we can to fix the issue.
Yeah, don't worry. I just ordered the 12-pack of the sriracha ones on Amazon, so I'll be good for a week.
Yeah, subscribe and save is really where you should be thinking about. Just saying that. Just throwing it out there too.
Right. Noted.
And for any of you who have kids out there, we do have Kapop capes from our Shark Tank appearance that we're happy to send out.
Awesome. Fantastic. Push the merch. The merch is great margin. Oh. Love it.
We actually don't sell. We thought about selling swag. But I have this philosophy on swag that if I'm going to spend the money on swag, I actually want people to wear the swag.
Sure.
So many brands spend this money, and they spend a lot of money on this crap that no one's ever going to wear, like bad sunglasses or crappy hats or whatever.
Yep.
I want nice shirts, I want nice hats, and I don't buy as many of them as I would, but I know that people, when they get them, will actually wear them. And there was a cool experience where I was at a gym in, is it Chicago, I think, and we're in Boulder, Colorado, and this woman was wearing a Kapop shirt. I was like, whoa, that's crazy. So I went up to her, and she'd gotten from a friend, and that was a cool experience, because we always joke that you've made it. This is going to sound horrible, so I apologize in advance, but you've made it when you see your bag like on the street or in a trash can somewhere, because you're so ubiquitous that like people are just tossing your bag around. Yeah, exactly. Like that's when I know I've made it, when people are littering my product, which hopefully do not litter my product, but just saying. We're excited by that.
Well, one of the ways we typically like to wind up, and it's been really great learning about your journey and having the conversation, is if you were to roll back time, take the knowledge that you have now and give your younger self, maybe pre-startup, maybe pre-General Mills, maybe pre-investment banker, if you were to give your younger self some advice, what would that be?
I'm going to answer you the answer I kind of talk about a lot, and then I'll give you the one that just kind of came to my gut. One thing I talk about all the time, and I was fortunate to kind of fall into this, but is having a finance understanding. I can't tell you how valuable having an understanding of financials, P&Ls, accounting, understanding modeling has differentiated me in my career. I've been very fortunate to been the fastest to this and fastest to that, and youngest to CEO, youngest to general manager. And the real big differentiator were two things. One is just I'm passionate as hell, and then two is that I really understand financials. I run everything with that P&L mindset. And I think it's a huge gap in the marketing landscape. I think it's a huge gap with entrepreneurs, and one that I help with a lot. But when you're raising money or you're selling to a retailer, and you can talk margins and you can talk assumptions, you can talk how you built your brand financially, it just makes a world of difference. So I'm constantly preaching that to my students' dismay, because they all don't like to hear that, and to other entrepreneurs' dismay, because no one wants to hear that finance is a way to grow. But I really do think that's one that I cannot encourage enough. And if it's not your thing, find somebody whose it is and is really close to the brand. For me, one thing I'll tell you, every entrepreneur I know who is battling through this and has been humbled by this process will tell you the same thing. God, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. If I knew this, would I have done this again? And I think the interesting thing is that all of us would say yes. And despite how hard, and I'm 6'6", but the amount of times I've been knocked down to my knees, literally almost in tears, because of how hard this journey has been. I've learned it's not about how great your product is. It's not how smart you are. It's the Rocky mentality. Will you get back up? Are you willing to get back up again and again? And we call it the daily 2x4, because every day someone's going to take a 2x4 and hit you across the face with it. And you have to be like, thank you, sir. May I have another? And be willing to do that. So that's the hardest thing, but finally, I haven't answered your question yet. So the one thing I would say that I've had to grow up with is I was, with passion and enthusiasm comes a bit of hot-headedness. And it has been a lifelong journey for me to learn a little bit of patience, because I will still say patience is not my virtue, but patience, the 24-hour rule is very helpful. Like, don't react right away, even if you're furious. Take a beat. And I still make mistakes constantly with this. Really think about the impact. Don't burn bridges, all these cliches. But as someone, and if there's people out there like me who are just so intense and engaged and passionate, you will make a lot of mistakes in your career by doing that. And I've just been so lucky that none of those mistakes have really come back to hurt me. I've been fortunate to learn from those. And I will tell you, the biggest growth has been in this entrepreneurship journey over the past few years. I've been humbled more times than I could possibly care to admit. I've been brought down so many pegs, and it's probably been the best thing for me as a human being, in addition to being a leader, because I now have a much better way of interacting with people, running teams, accepting mistakes and failure, how to hold people accountable, etc. So, just learn that I don't accept mistakes. I hate them, but understanding how to deal with them, understanding how to react, understanding how to take patience into account. And you can still go after somebody, but give yourself a beat to really think about how you want to handle a specific occasion. And I'm still easier said than done, because I'll tell you, when people screw up, I'm like, oh, okay, how do we want to handle this? Take a breath. So yeah, that's how I think about it.
No, that's great. That's great. And we've talked a lot about your product, but I know that our audience is going to want to find out more. So what's the best way for them to learn more about the brands that you have, the company, or to get in contact with you?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. On the brand side, kapopsnacks.com, bubbasfoods.com. We're launching a new website on April 1st. There's a kind of a holding page there, awakenedfoods.com, and awakenedfoodcrafters.com. Make sure you capture all that. I hope you guys remembered all those 15 different websites I just said.
We'll make sure that it's in the show notes. But Dustin, it's been great having you on. It's a great conversation.
Thank you.
You know, best of luck with the growth of what you're doing there. I mean, it's the grit and tenacity will carry you a long way, and you're building a great company. We look forward to watching the ride. Absolutely.
Hey, I really appreciate the opportunity, and if anyone ever needs an ear out there to go through the journey, I'm more than happy to help, and I really appreciate the time, and you guys are great, and look forward to continuing to talk in the future.
Sounds super. Take care.
Thanks, Dustin.
See ya.